Today I will take you through creating this easy landscape. It's got a beautiful sky and rolling hills. I've listed all of the supplies that you'll need in the description below. You'll start off by lightly sketching the hills and then some distant hills beyond that. These lines will be pretty close together and they can have a slight curve to them. And then you'll take a large brush. I'm using a size 16 round brush here, and you want to wet the sky completely. This will make the paper nice and damp. It should be completely wet but not dripping. And when you pick it up and turn it in the light, you should see just a little bit of a sheen on that part of the paper. And then you'll take the brush and dip it in some yellow. I'm using cadmium yellow hue here. And you want to concentrate this more along the left side of the paper. Pick up a little bit more of that pigment if you need to. And we'll have most of the yellow concentrated along the left side, and then pick up some clean water and start to smooth it out to the right and then a little bit above that area. Then you'll rinse your brush off, and I'm picking up some burnt umber to mix in with the ultramarine blue. This will knock back the vibrancy of the blue just a little bit. And then we'll add that along the very top of the paper. Have it come down in a cloud shape, so it'll be kind of uneven and slightly curved in some sections. And then you'll rinse your brush off and pick up some clean water and place that between the blue and the yellow. That'll further encourage the colors to blend together a bit more when they dry, and it'll create a really beautiful effect in your sky. Now we'll move into doing the grass and the meadow, so you'll clean off your brush. And then we're going to use some clean water to wet the bottom part of the paper. You'll leave the little strip in the middle completely dry at this point. Just focus on that bottom section. Once that's ready, you can pick up some green. I'm using sap green here, and I'm putting it into the mixing well with the cadmium yellow hue and some viridian green. I want this yellow green to be the first mixture that we'll place down on the paper. You can use your brush to put that all across the hills. This will be the lightest color green that we're using, and then we'll slowly layer in some darker colors. Then go ahead and rinse off your brush. And we'll add some of the sap green into that green mixture in the mixing well. This will darken it up just a little bit. And while that bottom section of the paper is still damp, you'll come back in with your brush, place that slightly darker mixture down along the grass, and you can put a slight curve to it to imply that there are hills. You can make it a little bit deeper. Watercolor will lighten up a bit as it dries. And then take a smaller brush. I'm using a size 4 round brush here. And once those two layers are completely dry, both the sky and the ground, you'll come back in with a more intense blue mixture. I'm using a mix of mostly ultramarine blue here. There's still a little bit of the burnt umber in it. And we'll use that to paint in the hills that are off in the distance. Starting on one side, you'll work your way across the paper. You can always turn your paper like I'm doing here if that makes it easier for you. And when you're using more pigment like this and less water, you may need to pick up more on your brush more often since the paint won't spread quite as much. That dry paper will really cling onto it, so you may need to reload your brush a couple of times and work your way across the paper. I'm working pretty small here. This is a 2.5 inch by 3.5 inch piece of paper, but you can of course do this on any size that you want to, or even make it square instead of rectangular. Once you've outlined the hills, rinse that brush off, And then we'll start adding in a little bit more of the darker green into the hills. I'm adding more viridian green to the mixture. And the grass section is dry at this point, so this will have more of a hard edge to it and it'll stand out and be a little bit more defined. You just want to create a little bit of a swoop off to the right side, have it start in a tapered point along the left, and then it flares out a little bit as it reaches that bottom right corner. And then fill in that left corner as well. This will add some definition to the hills, and it'll also really nicely frame the paper once you've taken off the tape. You've got that darker sky along the top and then darker green along the bottom. You can take some of your blue mixture and add it into the green. That'll create a really nice blue-green color. And you'll use that to further emphasize that bottom left corner. And then go along just the bottom section of that swoosh that you created over to the right. And we'll start adding some bushes and little distant trees into the background. You can start off by using the mix that's already on your brush, that blue-green, and you're just creating a series of smaller dots. These don't need to be perfectly round, because of course bushes and trees are not perfectly round. Just create varying sizes, some large, medium, and small. And you'll scatter those along the left side and then the right side, and again back on the left. If there's still the littlest bit of dampness in the meadow, you'll see that these green circles will start to soften and blend out a little bit as they start to dry. You'll be using a medium green tone here, and you can see it sets off really nicely against that yellow green that we kept over on the right side, and just adds a little bit more variation. Now let that dry completely and then clean off your brush, and you'll create an even darker green mixture. This will be a bluish green, so you can pick up some ultramarine and add that into the green. And then you'll go back over some of those bushes and trees. This will add a little bit more dimension. You want to have a variety of the greens and the greenish blues so that it looks like you're looking through layers the way that you would be in an actual landscape. You'll go over the same areas, but scatter the circles in a slightly different pattern. They'll be around in between the ones that you placed down initially. Using a small round brush is great for this because you can focus on using just that tapered point to create these little circles. And when we were using that larger brush before earlier in the painting, that's better for creating nice large washes, and it makes blending really easy. Another thing that will make your life easier and your practice easier is if you're using 100% cotton paper. There are a lot of different options in that space, and I've tagged a couple of them in the video description below. A painting like this gives you great exposure to two really common techniques in watercolor, which is wet on wet, which we use to create the sky, and then the first two passes of the green. And then it also takes you through wet on dry. That creates more of a defined line like you see in the hills that are off in the distance, as well as some of these trees and bushes. Then you can add just a little bit of that darker mixture to that very bottom left corner, and then the very bottom section of the darker green over to the right side. That will further define those areas. And then your painting is complete. Just remove that washi tape that creates that nice clean border, and you have a gorgeous painting. My name is Sarah. Be sure to subscribe for more watercolor tutorials, and I hope to see you again soon.